There's a hidden feature in email marketing platforms that nearly 80% of marketers ignore. It's costing them thousands in revenue, and today I'm going to show you how to utilize that for yourself. Hey, this is Neil Napier, the Stoic Entrepreneur, and in this video I'm going to talk about split testing your emails and how that can help you make more money in the short and the long term. Now, if you don't know what split testing means, it basically means you are testing within email marketing, you're testing one email against the other to see which one gets more open rates or which one gets more click-through rates. And depending on which one gets a better output, you send that email to majority of your email list. So say you have 1,000 people that you're sending an email to. What you can do is for the first 30 minutes, you can send that email to 2,000 people. One of the emails has a different subject line, the other email has a different subject line. And once you do that, within half an hour, you'll know which subject line is getting you better open rates, and you can send that subject line to the rest 800 people, which means you're going to maximize your open rates throughout the campaign. Now, typically when you do this, you will notice that with a good split testing, your email opens can go from say 10 to 15 or even 20%. Same with the click-through rates. If you're getting a click-through rate of about 2% in your emails, it can jump up to 3 or 4% with the right kind of split testing. In this video, I will explain to you how you can test various things in your email. You can test your subject lines, you can test your content, you can test your call to action, and I'll talk about what kind of results to look for in that case. Now let's jump on into Mailvio, which is what we're going to use for our split test. You can use any email split testing tool that you want, but we're using Mailvio because that is what we use day in, day out. So split testing is quite straightforward. What you do have to do is you have to create two different versions of the same email if you're testing the content, or in case of subject line, as I'll show you, you can just test out two different subject lines. So let's go ahead and do that right now. I'm going to jump into campaigns and I'm going to go ahead and check all campaigns first. This is where I can start a new campaign. Now within Mailvio, you've got the option of creating a simple campaign or an email split test campaign. Let me zoom in a little bit. There we go. So let's go ahead and do that. We'll enter a name and create campaign. Now here we've got a couple of options. Of course, in the beginning, what email list you want to mail for. Now, since this is a test, I'm going to pick a couple of them at random. So now you can enter your tests. As I mentioned earlier, there are a few things we can test when you are doing any kind of email split testing. So you can change what kind of subject line you're going to use. And I would always advise you to use dramatic subject lines. For example, in some of the tests that we've run, we found that subject lines with emojis get much higher open rates. But do bear in mind, if you overuse that, you're going to burn out your list and they're going to stop seeing that. I mean, there's something called banner blindness. There's also something called emoji blindness within subject lines of your email campaigns. But if you're using them occasionally, it helps your email stand out. So this, for example, is our first test campaign, and we've got a subject line, we've got a from name, from address, and reply address. Now, typically, if you're using any other email marketing tool, you can test out your subject lines. Of course, you can change out the content in your emails as well. You can change the call to actions, and you can do those tests. But with Mailvio, you can actually go further. You can even test your from name. So I'd encourage you to do that, where you can put in your from name. So instead of Neil Napier, I could say Neil Napier from Mailvio. And this way now this email could be received quite differently than the version A, which again will help you see which one gets you higher open rates. With Mailvio, you can even test your sender domain. So you can see which sender domain is getting you the best kind of open rates. And again, open rates are correlated quite often with deliverability. So of course, if you've got the same subject line, same name, but different sender email, you can very quickly investigate and see which kind of subject line, which kind of from name, which kind of email address in this case is giving you the maximum number of opens. And of course, you can continue using that. And it is something we advise you to test often as well. So again, within Mailvio, it's quite easy for me to go in and edit the actual email as well. So again, if I go in here, I can edit this and I can edit out the email content. And so because I'm testing out the sender domain in this case, I'm able to use the same email and see which one actually wins. So one more time, let's run two different tests that you can run when you are sending out these emails. So for starters, you are able to test out, as always, your subject line. That's quite standard. You can also test out your actual content. So which content gets you, let's say, a higher click-through rate, which content even gets you better opens, because depending on some of the spammy words that you're using, you will have non-spammy content getting higher opens. You can even test for call to actions. Again, all these are standards with other tools, but with Mailvio, like I mentioned, you're able to also test out your from name. And this is important because you can see quickly which kind of name gets a better response with your audience. You can even test out from email address. And this to me is very, very important, because now you're able to really see which domain, which email address is helping your inbox better. Now let's go through some of the best practices for each scenario as you're building out these tests. So let's say you're testing out subject lines. What should you test for? How should you test for good subject lines? What I propose you to do is create something diametrically opposite to what your control subject line is. So let's say my control subject line for this kind of setting Mailvio, for example, would be the best email marketing tool on the planet. And that's okay. It's a little bit self-serving headline. And to test something out quite differently, I'm going to use something along the lines of this email marketing tool gave me 40% extra open rate. Right? So just with that, you will see completely different reaction from your audience. And the more of these tests you do, you'll know exactly which way your audience lean. Are they more into the hype? Are they more into the stats? Are they more into the emotions? You can always test these things. Then when it comes to the email content, there's a few different ways of testing it. You can test out different designs, different templates. You can test out long copy versus short copy, urgency versus no urgency, all these different things. But one big test that you can do is you can again go from logical to emotional and see what your customers, what your audience is responding to. So you can have an email which is filled with statistics, which is filled with logical reasons of why someone should buy something. Alternatively, you can have an email which pushes all the emotional trigger buttons. And of course, if you don't know how to write a good email copy, we've got some courses, or you can always use ChatGPT for that as well. But again, once you are creating and using diametrically opposite kind of content, you'll be able to see exactly what your audience likes. And the call to action is no different. You can have short call to actions, long call to actions with links, call to actions without links. And of course, within the call to actions, you can have urgency built in. You can use logical call to actions. You can use emotional call to actions, and you can track all these things. Now, this is one important thing that I want you to understand when you're doing split testing. You can't just do one split test and say, okay, I know this one and I'm going to continue using that. You've got to think of split tests like this big thing that you're trying to achieve. So track everything, track every single thing that you are testing, and see how that changes over time. Are you able to see patterns? Is there consistency in what you're doing? In our case, for example, when we're testing logical versus emotional content, we test it at least 3 times to see which one typically wins. And if we don't have an absolute winner, we come back and test it again next month just to see if our list has changed as to how they perceive, how they receive our content. So again, keep a track of all the tests you're doing, because long term they're going to help you build some really good insights. And again, you can always feed this information to ChatGPT, and ChatGPT can tell you which kind of tests are working or what kind of patterns are forming with your email list. Now, before I end this, I'm going to give you one very, very cool test that I've done in the past with my email testing. So I've tested within the emails actually stating the price of what I'm selling and not stating the price. When I don't state the price, I get higher clicks over to the page. But when I do state the price, I get lower number of clicks. But actually, because of that, I get higher conversions, because by the time people land on the page, they know how much the product is going to cost. And it's very easy for me to then convince them that they should just go ahead and purchase that product. So go ahead and try this out for yourself. Do some split testing. Even one split test a day will help you get remarkably better results in the short term. And when you do them every day, when you do these every week, it's going to help you build out patterns that work for your audience, and you can build a solid business foundation based on split testing your emails to make more money. This is Neil Napier. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, give us a like, subscribe to this channel, and request more content, and I'll be more than happy to create that for you.